Welcome back to the channel. I'm Melissa, and today's video is from our 100th podcast episode where me and Jess share our most valuable life lessons that we have learned over the years from our own health and fitness journeys. Because these were so powerful, we wanted to share them here with you in hopes that you can take away at least one of these lessons and apply it to your life this year and for the rest of your life. Make sure you drop a comment below and let us know which one resonates most with you, and we'll see you in the video. I feel like the first one, this kind of bleeds into it naturally, is the importance of having self-awareness. And I think that this is my biggest thing of that's what I find, I guess, attractive in another person, or just I like you more if you have more self-awareness, because I think it's really important to have self-awareness in life. Otherwise you kind of act a fool, and then people are kind of looking at you like, oh God, gotta have some self-awareness. But no, I mean, I really feel like, in terms of when it comes to personal growth in your life, you do need to have a certain level of self-awareness to be able to get past where you are. If you don't understand the things that you're doing every day, subconsciously or consciously, that are holding you back from being a better person, how would you ever be able to begin to make changes towards being that best version of yourself, right? And I think that's something that both you and we discovered at different points in our lives. And I think, the very first time years ago when we made our first initial massive transformation, we had a level of self-awareness of the things that we were doing where, we were poisoning our bodies and we weren't taking care of ourselves. And, that all changed. And I think fast forward to now, it's kind of the way that the self-awareness in our business, and how can we be better leaders, and what can we do to prioritize our mental health and to prioritize our body, so that, it's not just the business that's running us, it's us that's running the business. You know what I mean? So I think that
100%.
Self-awareness is an ongoing journey, and it's something that you need to always be aware of, I guess.
I agree completely. I think that is really that first step, is to the more and the better that you can understand yourself, the more that you can tune into what you actually need, right? And this is kind of the problem. A lot of us are never taught really how to be self-aware. And so we just kind of wake up and we let all of the urgencies of life pull us in all of the different directions every day, and we never take that time to really tune into to ourselves, or what we need, or how we're feeling, or what our body's even telling us. Right. And so that makes it very easy to be that pawn in the game that's constantly jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, because you don't even know what you want. You don't really even know what you need. You've never taken out the time to figure out who you are as a person and what's going to fit best in your life. And so you're just kind of open and vulnerable to hopping on all of the, the next trends, because that's just kind of the easy thing to do. But when you've had a chance to kind of sit back and understand yourself, and this is what makes me happy, and this is what I need, and I want more of this in my life, and I want less of this in my life, and this is how I want to present myself to the world. It changes a lot, because that kind of bleeds into all of the other pieces of, what are the relationships that you keep, and what are the habits that you practice, and how are you showing up, in the world? Are you someone that is front and center, and, you're speaking up, and you're demanding what you're worth? Or are you someone that's continuing to shrink back? And I agree with you. I think that's the very, very first piece to all of it. In that, I think, we have to look at all of the stuff that comes out of having more self-awareness. And in having more self-awareness, and as you continue to grow, there is going to be inherent change, right? Life is just change, period. There is not one person that has made it through life without having to confront change. There's just not. And even if right now you've gone through a lot of change in your life, you are still not going to make it out of the rest of your life without confronting massive change. We have to experience change if we want to experience growth. And so when you are thinking about change, you can be afraid of it all you want. I transparently, I fear change. I don't like it. I enjoy being comfortable. I don't like the idea of things changing, but when I look back on it, like the biggest periods of change in my life have also led to the most growth. They've led to the most lessons. And I would not trade any of it for anything because it's led me to be the person that I am today. So if you are someone who looks at change and you shy away from it or you're afraid of it, that would be a big life lesson that I would say, you know, it's inevitable. So instead of fearing it, start learning how to embrace it, start learning how to learn from it, and start learning how you can adapt to change.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, with change comes risk, right? And they kind of go hand in hand because if something is going to change, you usually have to take a risk in order, like, to elicit that change. And, you look at the majority of people and everyone just wants to stay complacent. Everyone wants to stay comfortable because
Hmm.
that's just where you're happy. And when you take risks, yes, there are like times where you're gonna succeed, and it's gonna be a positive change. And there's gonna be times when you fail. And I think this is also where we can, kind of talk about failure in the same vein as like failure doesn't mean you failed
Hmm.
necessarily. Failure it means you're learning, right?
Hmm.
So you have to look at it more as a stepping stone to get to where you want to be versus something pushing you backwards. And sometimes it is necessary to take a step backwards to be able to take more steps forward, right? You've heard that how
Hmm.
many times, but it's true. And it's true in every area of your life, whether it is weight loss, whether it is business, whether it is relationships. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Embracing change, taking risks to get to that change, and embracing the failures along the way. Like, that is how you're going to get the life that you want. Because
Hmm.
if nothing's changing, nothing's changing. If you're never
Right.
taking risks, if you're never embracing, mistakes that you make or failures, or you're never learning from any of that, you're going to stay exactly where you are. And do you really want to wake up, you know, 20, 30 years from now and be like, and have regret? Because I think that
Yeah.
is the biggest, that's the biggest thing that everyone wants to avoid is regretting things in life.
Yeah. And I also like want to challenge you right on that too, because it's like if you wake up 30 years from now and your life is exactly the same as it is right now, is that really what you want? Like, is
Right.
that something that you'll be fulfilled in terms of I lived on this planet for 80 years, but I never went outside of my comfort zone. I never challenged myself. I never tried to do anything differently because I was so afraid and I just stayed stagnant the entire time. I guarantee there's no one that is like, I'd never want my life to change. I want to be in the exact same place I am right now, 40 years from now. It's not how we're designed as humans. We need to grow and we need to evolve. And in that too, I think we have to understand that with change, with failure, that can inevitably bring around endings, right?
Yeah.
And when we think about endings, we think about or at least I think about it this way. I think about thing it is almost like a sadness, right? Like closing a chapter. To me, it has like almost like a sad undertone to it because again, I am someone that's nostalgic. I don't really love change. So whenever I think about like having to end something, I'm like you know what I mean? When I can't even read the ending of books
I
because I'm like
know.
I'm gonna miss this. Or when we end like our challenges or our webinars, I'm like, I'm gonna miss you guys. Don't leave. Like I feel really sad, right?
Yeah.
But I think we have to remember that looking at endings as a sad thing does not serve us. And every single ending does signify a new beginning, right?
Mm.
So when you're kind of like looking at your life and you're looking at your journey, there might be some things in your life that need to end. There might be some chapters that need to close. And I always think about, one of our most successful clients, Mariah.
Yeah.
Um, and for her, a big part that came out of her journey is she had to end one of the most important friendships to her, right? The girl that she was friends with was like a sister. Um, and for her, she realized that even though we are this close and we've had this very long friendship, your friendship is not serving me. It's actually draining me and it's actually extremely toxic. And for her, she had to choose to end that friendship in order to advance further on her journey. So when you think about everything that you're talking about, right? Like the change, the self-awareness of like knowing what I need, what I'm willing to tolerate, what I want in terms of my relationships. When you think about the risk of, well, if I leave my best friend, like who do I have as a best friend anymore? You think about thinking about those things as failures. Well, like, a relationship, that's a failed relationship, but
Yeah.
it's not, right? Like
Yeah.
that's an ending. It's a closing of a chapter, but all of those things are that stepping stone that you've learned and you've grown from. And now you get to make that choice to move on to the next chapter of your life where maybe everything is 20 times better than you ever imagined.
Yeah, I love that. And I just felt emotional when you were saying that, because I always think about, when I think about endings, and like death, I always think about like the seasons and like the holidays,
Mm,
because when you think about it, it's almost like, you start with spring where everything blooms and it's really beautiful and vibrant. And then there's the summertime and, everything's really green. And then there's the fall and like the colors are still really pretty, but everything, it's kind of like you're like kind of nearing like the end of like your life. And then you get to like Christmas time. And this always just kind of sticks with me of like the bright lights. And it's almost like the peak, right? It's like
mm,
the final like burst of life that you have to
mm,
celebrate. And then January comes and things die, right? It's
mm,
kind of like it's over, it's dead, but then what happens, it starts over again. And it
mhm.
does that every single year. And so every year you get sad about, Christmas being over, or like that, warm and cozy time of year where it's really festive, like it's over and it's really sad. But we
Yeah.
get that every year,
Hmm.
right? But like if it never ended, you wouldn't be able to have that again, because it would just
Right.
be an ongoing celebration and it wouldn't be special anymore. So I
Yeah.
think
It's
that's
almost like
like,
things have to go away for you to appreciate sometimes how
yes.
valuable they are too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. Right. Yeah. It's like if it was always that, if that was always the case and you never had any other experiences, how would you ever be able to appreciate like the beauty
exactly.
of that season? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I think another thing that when I like think back to our list, it's about, and I guess this maybe like as part of the self-awareness piece, but it's also about you being honest and taking responsibility and setting boundaries. And I feel like those all kind of like overlay onto one another because they really are like similar topics, or like there's a similar thread that runs through those things. So I guess let's talk about that, maybe starting with honesty. Um, because and I kind of look at honesty from two different lenses, I guess. Number one, being honest with yourself. In terms of, are you actually happy with where you are in your life right now? And if you look at like, because again, we're so busy and it can be really easy to just kind of wake up and go through the same motions every single day and never have time to think about where you are and what you want. But if you really had to like pare it all back and look in the mirror, can you actually say, I am really happy with what my life looks like right now?
That's a really hard thing to do. And honestly, I feel like that's why people avoid this so much, because it's a really hard thing to look yourself in the mirror and be like, I'm not proud of this. I'm not happy with where I am right now.
Hmm.
I know I could do more and I'm not
Hmm.
doing it.
Hmm.
Because then again, that's where change comes in, and that's where the risk comes in, and that's where you might fail. And so you kind of see how this whole thing that we're talking about is this one giant loop that everyone really wants to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. If you avoid it and you never confront it, then you can stay comfortable. You can stay complacent. You can stay exactly where you are. Right. And so
Right.
I think that's why so many of us do kind of bury our head in the sand and go, it's not that bad. It's not that terrible. But is this really the life that you wanted for yourself? The way that
Mhm.
you look, the way that you're living, the way that you feel, the work that you're doing, the relationships that you have, the money you're making, the house you live in, the car you're driving? Like, is that where you want to be right now? And if it's not, that's not a bad thing. Okay. You can be very grateful for what you have, but you can
Yeah.
also at the same time know that you want more. But what's not okay is if you settle. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at all of these things and you're like, gosh, no, I don't want to be here. And this is not what I wanted to be doing, but this is the best that it's not the best. You're not dead yet. You still have
Right.
time. right? But if you never
Mhm.
actually look in the mirror and are honest with yourself about how you're feeling, then you're not going to have enough trust in yourself to make the decisions to be able to do better or be better. So, honesty is a huge foundational piece of all of this. And if you have never taken time to sit down and honestly assess all areas of your life, like let this be your wake up call to do it today because there is
Mhm.
time to change. And once you
Yeah.
have honestly assessed those areas, right? Well, then it's time to start taking responsibility for your life, right?
Yeah. Right. And that's kind of where, people talk about like choices define you, and it's true. And at this point, when like you have self-awareness, you are honestly assessing like where you are. Now you can take ownership of your actions and the choices that you're making in life. So if you're unhappy with where you are, but you wake up tomorrow morning and you do the exact same thing that you've been doing for the past 30, 40 years, well, that's on you. That's not on anyone else. I don't care if
Mm-hmm.
you have the best coach in the world. Like, they can't want it more than you. You have to be the person who decides to wake up and make a change.
Right.
Right. And so, like, you have to understand that every action that you take is either a vote for or against the person that you want to become. But
Mm-hmm.
you can't even know the person that you want to become unless you take the time to look at yourself in the mirror and truthfully say, am I happy with where I am in life or not?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And so that's why responsibility is such a big thing. And when you finally decide to take responsibility for what you want, you are going to see that there are things in your life that are serving you and things in your life that are not serving you. And that's where you
Hmm.
really need to double down on the things that are serving you and start to cut out the things that are not serving you. So again, we're just kind of like looping through all of the same stuff we've already been talking about, right? That's where change comes in. That's where risk comes in. That's where endings come in. And that's
Yep.
where you might need to set certain boundaries to say, okay, these things that don't serve me anymore, they've got to go because I want to change my life. I want to move in a new direction. If I keep doing the same actions, then the same actions are going to get me the same results. And I don't want that anymore. So you
And
need to
well,
set the boundaries and you need to keep them.
right. And you want like a real, like an actual example. Not that we're telling you to like go get a divorce or anything, or like to like break up with who you're with, but I would take a look at the person that you spend the most time with. Right now, if this person, if you are being honest with them and you're like, hey, I want more for myself, I want more for us in life, and like they really aren't supporting you in that, and you've gone through all the things of like you are trying to make the right choices and you're trying to make a change and you're taking responsibility, you're not like putting the blame on them, you're taking
Mm-hmm.
responsibility and you're changing your actions, and they are someone that's holding you back, that might be a situation where like you don't have a place in my life anymore.
Right.
And so you can see where like you can start to really assess, the people that are in your life and be like, are you serving me or are you holding me back? And
Mm-hmm.
again, it goes back to self-awareness, to honesty, to all these things that we've already talked about. But it's so important because otherwise, like we just said, you go through your whole life settling because you feel like you can't do any better. And then you
Yep.
wake up wishing that you had made that choice, 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, that takes me back to like the Mariah story where I like, think about, sometimes breaking up with your best friend is worse than ending a romantic relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't
Yeah.
imagine losing you as my best friend. Like that would
No.
absolutely crush me and destroy me, right? I wouldn't even
Yeah.
want to live anymore, to be honest.
No.
And so you can like sometimes we kind of gloss over like, oh, she like ended our friendship. Who cares? Like that's but like when you like think about never having your best friend in your life again, that can be a gut wrenching decision to have to make. But what did she do? She knew that something in her life needed to change. She set the boundary and she upheld the boundary. And that's a really big deal. And that kind of brings, to another point that was on our list was about commitments and keeping the commitments that you make to yourself. And, on your journey, if you want something to change, if you want your life to look different, you are going to have to get really, really good at keeping commitments to yourself the same way that you keep them to others. And I want you to think about the promises that you make to your kids or to your spouse or to your parents or your friends or your boss or your coworkers and all of the commitments that you make to them that you uphold, even if it's running you into the ground, right? But then when it comes to a place where you need to make a commitment to yourself of, I'm going to start prioritizing 20 minutes a day for me to get outside and walk, or I'm going to prioritize drinking, 16 ounces of water for the day, and you can't even do that, you need to ask yourself, why are you not prioritizing the commitments you make to yourself the same way that you prioritize the commitments that you make to everyone else in your life? And that is something that like drastically needs to change if you want your life to change.
Yeah. And I love this because Ed Milet says this of like the quickest way to build self-confidence is by keeping the promises you make to yourself, right? Because
Mm,
what happens is every time you break a promise to yourself, like imagine if you were, you had a best friend and every time they promised you something, they broke the promise, right? They never
mm,
followed through on their word. How would you feel about them? You probably wouldn't like them much. You definitely wouldn't trust them.
right.
So imagine that you're doing this to yourself for your entire life. You're breaking promises to yourself because it's not that important. Well, how do you feel about yourself, right? You don't
Mhm,
trust yourself. And so no wonder why when you try to start a new diet program or you try to, start your health journey over again, even though you say, I'm going to be better this time, I'm actually going to do it this time, you won't do it because deep down you don't trust yourself. And
mm,
so the way that you can build that self confidence up and repair that trust with yourself is by making small promises to yourself and keeping those promises. So if you say, I'm going to get out of bed by 6 a.m. in the morning, like get out of bed by 6 o'clock in the morning. If you say, I'm going to drink water before coffee, have water before coffee. If you say, I'm going to go for a walk, 10-minute walk, it doesn't have to be anything drastic. A 10-minute walk when I get home from work, go for that walk. The more that you keep those promises, the more that you're going to start to build that trust with yourself. And so,
mhm,
people talk all the time about, you need momentum to do things. Well, action produces momentum, right? And it kind of goes back to an object in motion stays in motion, an object at rest stays in rest. So if you
mhm.
have momentum by like making you keep these small promises that you make to yourself, it's going to keep your momentum going and you're not going to feel so much resistance towards doing those things. And over time, with enough time of doing this, it's just going to be second nature to you. This is just who you are. It's just what you do.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that you have to remember is like none of this is going to happen overnight, right? Like you're not going to flip a switch where it's going to go from, "Oh, I'm someone that does not keep any promises that I make to myself," to I do everything that I say I'm going to do. It's not going to happen. And that's exactly why you say to start small, right? And to keep it
Mhm.
like find the simple things that you can change, right? The more effort that you have to put towards something, the less likely you are going to do it. So find the things that require the least amount of effort for you just to get started, right? We don't need to overcomplicate things. They don't have to be these big, grandiose things, these giant boulders that we need to move. It's the smallest pebbles that you
Yeah.
need to start with because it's not going to feel like it's so much resistance, right? Like if I tell you go outside and go move the 600-pound rock in your backyard, you're going to be like, I have no fucking idea how to do that. Like I have to hire a machine. I have to find people how to do, I don't know how to do that. But if I tell
Right.
you to go like kick a couple rocks out of the driveway, like you can walk out and go do that right now, right? So we
Right.
have to look at like your journey the same way of like the load of effort that you need to get started. We have to really simplify that and pare it back and just find like what are the small pieces and the first movers that we can do to start to create some of that momentum. So really focusing on like what can we do to keep things simple and then
Mhm.
remembering that you just have to be patient, right?
Mhm.
We are such a society that wants instant gratification. And like there are drones that are literally delivering shit to your door now in like, 30 minutes of you ordering it. I don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore because I can Instacart everything. Like if I didn't want to ever leave my house, I don't have to and I can get things immediately. And
Right.
that's a really scary thing because we want everything else in our life to be immediate, right? But
Right.
anything that's worth having, anything that is going to make you really proud, anything that's actually going to fundamentally change your life, you need to have patience if you
Mhm.
want that to come to fruition. So remember that anything that's worth having is going to take time. So lead with patience. Um, in that, what we found is that if things aren't moving as quickly or as efficiently as you want to, seek guidance, right?
Yeah. Well,
Guidance
that was
was
the
the big
biggest game changer for
thing
us.
for
Yeah.
business and for our health, right?
Both. Yes, for both.
Yeah.
And I think that is again, it goes back to self-awareness. Like this directly ties to self-awareness of, especially, I don't know about you guys, but I know that Jess and I were raised with figure it out. Like, you're
Mhm,
smart enough to figure it out. You don't need anyone
mhm,
else. Like, you can do it. You can figure it out, right? Like, don't play the victim. And so I think that that was a hard thing for us to be like, well, how difficult can fitness and nutrition really be? Like, we just have to want it more. We just have to try harder. We just have to, just like, I don't know, like look on Google a little bit more and find the right thing and then just do it. Or with our
mhm,
business, it was like, well, we're really smart people. We both ran, big teams and media teams in New York City. Like, we should be able to run a business. No, it was the self-awareness piece of, we have never run a business before. We
mhm,
have never gotten like the physique results that we were after. What makes us think that we would know how to do either of those things? And so
mhm,
at that point, it was like, yes, there is obviously a time and a place for trying on your own and being patient with it. But then there's also a time and a place for, you need help and you need guidance and you
mhm,
need to go to people who have done the things that you want to do, right? Because
mhm.
those are the people that you should be taking advice from.
Yeah, I always think about Alex Hormozy, and he always says, you can do anything that you want to do. And to get to that end goal that you want, you're going to have to pay one way or another. You're either going to pay in time or you're going to pay in money, right?
Mhm.
You can spend, the next 10 years of your life trying to figure out all the things that you need to do to repair your metabolism and create a diet that feels like a lifestyle and lose weight and actually keep it off. You could spend, decades trying to figure out how to do that on your own. And, a lot of women in our community, when we, host challenges, we ask, how long have you been dieting for? There are people that are like 50, 60 years. You've been
Yeah.
dieting, trying to figure this out for 50, 60 years and you haven't yet. Oh my God. Like, did you hear yourself? Like, and we're just okay with that. So when you think about paying in time, gosh, you just spent 50 years of your life that you cannot get back. You have paid for these lessons in time,
I just,
right?
I always feel like this is something that is just so mind blowing. And I feel like people need to hear real life examples of this. The picture that's hanging behind my head right now. Imagine if I spent 30 years trying to hang that picture on my wall and I couldn't do it,
Mm-hmm.
versus just calling someone who knows how to hang things, put it on a wall. They come in,
Mm-hmm.
they do it, it's over and done with, move on.
Right. Exactly.
30 years of trying by myself. You guys,
I
it's
know.
crazy.
I
And
know. I
so
was
I
saying that
think,
to a woman this morning. I'm like, if you got in your car every day for 30 years and it didn't start, wouldn't you be like, every day you're not going to get in your car and try to start it again? You're going to be like, hey, we need to get a new car. Right?
right.
Like,
And so it
you're
goes back to self awareness. Like, you need to know when it's time to ask for help.
right. That's a big deal. And so, like he was saying, right, the time or the money, if you're going to spend all of these years of your life, or sometimes you need to take money because money is energy, is the same way time is energy. And sometimes you need to take money and you need to invest that money towards a mentor or towards a guide or towards someone that knows more than you do and has done things that you want to do in order to expedite and shorten the process, right? Because
Yeah.
they can take all of the lessons that they've had to spend time to learn and package it and create it and give it to you in a way that's going to allow you to sprint forward and not take all of the time, right? We can't get time
Right.
back, we can get money back. So that was a huge life
I love
lesson.
that.
Um in all of that though, like with all of the changes, with all of the struggle and the risk and the failure and the learning and setting the boundaries and like really changing your life, guys, this is something that I think has been really a big theme for us this year is all of that shit can feel heavy. Like
Yeah.
it can feel sometimes like you are drowning and like you are underwater and you're like, what am I doing? And this doesn't even feel like me. And it's scary and it can feel disorienting and it can feel sometimes like honestly like you're suffocating of like, oh my God, is there ever going to be an end? Because this really does not feel good to do it, even though you know it's the right thing that
Right.
you need to be doing. And so
Right.
that is another huge life lesson in all of it. You really need to prioritize gratitude and mindfulness and just being present in the moments that matter most because you can say all day, right? Like, I want more money or I want a better body. And if you're only focusing on the things you lack, the only thing that the universe is going to give you is more lack, right? You can want better. Like I said in the beginning of the episode, you can want more, but you can also be insanely grateful for what you have right now, right? Like maybe my legs
Yeah.
don't look exactly the way that I want them to, but gosh, they're strong and I get to walk around on them every day. And, I just did an amazing leg workout yesterday and you think about all of the things that you're grateful for your legs for, even though they're not where I want them to be, like aesthetically, I'm working towards that, but I'm really, really grateful for them at the same time. Like gratitude has to be the foundation for everything that you do.
Yeah, I think that was something that we learned early on too when we first started taking on clients, was when we didn't incorporate any of that into our programming, and when their protocol was like purely just like having macros and like, you know, a training program, people weren't changing as much as we had seen changes in ourselves. When we started incorporating gratitude for our clients and having them like write down 3 things you're grateful for every day, 3 things you're proud of yourself for, that's where the big changes came. Like that's where, you know, the mental and emotional stress was alleviated. That's where you start to see this, like these people, these women become the lightest versions of themselves, because, and it wasn't just physical, it was everything else was changing and just being released. And like they were just dropping, like shedding, you know, physical, emotional, mental weight, like I said. But it was because they started to practice gratitude and they started to focus on the things that they had and not the things that they were lacking, not the things that they still wanted that they didn't have yet. And that changes everything, and it really grounds you. And it's because, you know, you can't think about the big picture. Like, yes, obviously it's good to have like that big vision goal, but if that's all you're focusing on, you're going to miss the little things that you're doing every day. And it's funny timing that we're recording this right now, because we were just watching the playoffs for the World Series, and I don't know who's the coach of the Texas Rangers, Bruce Bochy, I think his name is Bochy. They were interviewing him after they won game 6, and you need to win, you know, it's best out of 7 to advance to the World Series. And they were interviewing him and saying, you know, how does it feel to be going back to the World Series? Like, is that a really like special moment for you? And he was like, I'm not even focused on that right now. I'm focused on winning tomorrow night. Because if we don't win tomorrow night, we're not even going to the World Series. Right. And I was like, holy shit, I gotta write a piece of content about that. But it's so true, because like if he was just like, oh, well, you know, the World Series is going to be great, and I don't, you know, who cares about game 7? Like, of course we're going to, like, I can't wait for the World Series. Well, if you lost game 7, you wouldn't be there at all. Right. So it just kind of goes back to like, you have to focus on the things that are right in front of you and like build up those small wins to be able to get to that World Series for yourself.
Yeah, it's cool to have the forward-facing vision, but if you're not doing, like, you're not focused on the immediate things that you need to do to win each day, that forward vision is never going to come. I love that. Exactly. That's so important. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like, just to wrap all of this up, guys, like when we talk about everything, I know that, you know, the house that you live in is important. I know that your job is important. And I know that your family is important, and all of your, you know, relationship, your loved ones, all of the things in your life are very important. But at the end of the day, if you don't have your health, nothing matters. You can make millions of dollars every year, but if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to enjoy those millions of dollars, right? You can have the best family in the entire world, but if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to show up as the best possible version of you for them. So when we strip everything else back, without your health, everything else in your life is going to suffer. So if you are someone that has never prioritized your health, I hope that this is your wake-up call to be like, shit, like everything else that I'm giving my time and attention to, it's important, but it's not as important as making sure that I'm okay and that I'm healthy. Because if you don't exist, none of that shit matters. It doesn't exist anymore if you don't exist.
Yeah, I love this conversation so much. I think it's something that I've been actually hearing a lot lately. And I was just at a conference where I heard Andy Elliott speak, and he said that during his speech, and it really hit me. And he said, the body runs the business, not the other way around. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not putting your health first, what makes you think you're going to have a successful business? And it goes for everything in life. Like, what makes you think that anything you do in life will be, you know, successful if you're not taking care of your health first? Your health, your body, that all comes first. And when that is prioritized, then everything else, you can move ahead with everything else, because that's what matters. Like, that's what runs everything else.
And that goes back to the person that sent us the nasty message that improving your health doesn't correlate to everything else. And
Fuck it. God, I wish I could call you out by name and just tell you to suck a fat brick, man.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So that's the biggest takeaway, guys, is without your health, nothing else matters. Your health literally drives everything about you. It drives your mental health. It's going to drive your emotional health, your relationships, the way you show up in every single area of your life. And we have to remember that all of the steps that you are taking to improve your health and effectively improve your life, it is a journey, right? It is a journey. It is not something that is just you do it once and it's all done. Just like anything else. It's just like, think about raising a child. Like, I don't have a child, but you don't pop it out and then you're like, cool, I'll take care of you till like you can walk and, read and do all of the things that like a child does. You are responsible for that child, like for the rest of your life in one way or another, right? Like,
Right.
obviously when they're adults, you don't have to take care of them in the same way, but you still have an emotional responsibility and you have a relational responsibility to them. And it's the same thing with your health. It's not just like you get to, tend to your health for a couple of days or a couple of weeks and then, it's all over. I don't have to worry about it anymore. But it is something that you have to figure out how to continue to weave into your life and prioritize, because this is something that you are going to have to give attention to for the rest of your life. So if you're someone that you are kind of attending to your health in only these short spurts where you're equating health with weight loss and that's it, that's not health. So we have to really zoom out and think big picture of like, what is the journey that I'm on? What is the life that I want to live? What do I want my life to look like 10, 15, 20, 40 years from now? And how can I get all of those puzzle pieces together to create a journey that feels good and that I'm happy with and I'm proud
I love
of?
that. Yeah. And I think that kind of brings us to our final one of what is your legacy? Like, what are you going to leave behind? Right. Because you think about, everyone talks about generational wealth, but no one talks about generational health. And the fact
Mm-hmm.
that, so many people, especially, our demographic, it's a lot of people come from generations of diabetes and like just severely overweight. And it's just like, well, even my kids are suffering with that right now. But imagine if you could be the first mover in your family. You were the first person that changes like the lineage of your family because you decided to take control of your health. And now because of that, your kids are growing up watching how you act, your relationship with
Mm-hmm.
food. And because of that, they're going to have a better relationship with food. And because of that, their children and their grandchildren and so on. You just changed your entire family lineage. That's
Yeah, that is
powerful.
so good. That is so powerful. And it goes back to what we just talked about of like health is the driver of everything, because that's great. If you can leave your family wealthier than you were, amazing. I'm sure that changed their lives in a multitude of ways. I see the value in it for sure. But if you left your family with a ton of money, but they're so overweight and they have heart disease and diabetes and all these other horrible things and they die at the age of 55, what is the point? Like, you left them all of the money, wonderful, but you didn't impart any knowledge or education on them about what it means to be healthy and take care of themselves and live a full, robust life, guys. And at the end of the day, this is why what we do is so important. Okay. And this is why we have made it such a mission to stand up to the diet industry, because God, the diet industry is just in it for profit. And that is it. It's about a bottom line. It's about making shareholders happy. And that is it. But when you strip all of that back and you look at the general health of the general population, we are struggling as a nation, and especially as women, because women have a whole a whole different level of burden that they carry as caretakers and as mothers and as spouses, and trying to juggle all of the things. It's a different level of pressure than
Yeah.
men feel. And I'm like, it just is. It's
It's
different.
true. Yeah.
It's true. And so we have to remember that everything else that we are working for is not, it's important, but it is not as important as you and yourself as a human. But if you never learn how to value yourself as a human, then your health is not going to matter to you. And this is why we are standing up to with all of the big box programs that say, just do this, just eat these calories and, do these exercises and you'll feel better. Because if you don't change inherently what you believe about yourself or what you know about yourself or what's important to you, you can count calories and do jumping jacks to the day that you die, but it's not going to fundamentally change your life. And that is what's at the essence of true health, is being healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah, it's true. And that's, if there is anything that you take away from this, your transformation is going to be more than just physical. But
Mm,
you have to have enough self-awareness to know when to seek out the right help, to be like, I need more help than just another cookie cutter program that's going to give me macros or calories and tell me what to do to move my body. Like, I need to make some serious changes in my life. And if
mm.
that's
So
you,
good.
if you're not part of our community yet, I encourage you to go down to the description, join our free Facebook group. We have, 20, almost 23,000 women who are in there. And we have a very, very, very incredible, supportive, encouraging community. So it's honestly like we can hang our hats on the fact that our community is probably the best women's weight loss community on the planet,
Mm,
just based off of the type of human beings that we fill the room with. Like, there is no
mm,
negativity. There is no, anyone putting anyone down. Everything is so encouraging. We have complete strangers who are nominating other strangers in our community to win full scholarships because they support each other
mm.
that much. So if you
Ugh, me
feel like
cry.
this spoke to you, yeah, if this spoke to you, if you're like, you know what, I'm ready to make some serious changes, it's time. Just come join us inside of our community, and we'll see you guys there.